A very good morning, my dear students. Today I am going to talk about one of the most important topics in viral infection chapter, that is HIV. Acquired immunodeficiency syndrome, AIDS. It is caused by the human immunodeficiency virus, that is HIV, and it is characterized by immunosuppression, which leads to a spectrum of clinical manifestation that includes opportunistic infection, secondary neoplasm, and neurological manifestation. The two genetically distinct populations of virus known to cause AIDS are HIV-1 and HIV-2. HIV-1 is the most common type, which is responsible for AIDS in Central Africa and in the rest of the world, whereas the HIV-2 will be seen in West Africa and India. Human immunodeficiency virus is a non-oncogenic human retrovirus that belongs to the lentivirus group type 3. The viron is an icosahedral structure that contains numerous external spikes formed by two major envelope protein, the external GP120 and the transmembrane GP41. The core protein P17 is found outside the viral nucleoid and form the matrix of the viron. The HIV glycoprotein antireceptors, that is GP41 and GP120, make a snug attachment of their specific receptors on a human cell membrane. These receptors are CD4, which are typically found on T4 lymphocytes and other white blood cells. The co-receptors called CCR5 fusin permits docking within the host cell and fusion with the cell membrane, leading to the formation of syncytia. Now we'll see the mode of transmission for HIV. HIV is transmitted through the body fluids such as blood products, semen and vaginal fluids. Intravenous drug abuse like sharing needles and unsterilized blades. Unprotected intercourse and from mother to baby. Now we'll see the pathogenesis of HIV. The two major targets of HIV infections are the immune system and the central nervous system. A characteristic feature of AIDS is the profound immune suppression of the cell-mediated immunity after gaining entry into the host, either through the exposure to the blood, body fluids, or sexual activity. The first step of virus infection involves the binding of the viron to the surface of the target cell. This is mediated by the binding of envelope GP120 to the CD4 surface protein, which is found on the most helper T cells. After binding, the virus becomes internalized onto the host cell where it becomes uncoated. The viral RNA is then reverse transcribed into the linear double-stranded viral DNA in the cytoplasm of the infected cells by the reverse transcriptase and then transported to the nucleus where it is first circularized and then integrated into the host cell. The integrated viral DNA is transcribed into a full-length RNA by the host cells. These RNA transcripts can be either be packed within the virus particle to serve as a genome of a progenivirus, or they can serve as mRNA for the synthesis of viral gene products. HIV first infects the macrophages where it multiplies and is shed the infecting lymphocytes and the other cells that possess the CD4 receptor site. Following the infection, the virus often enters the dormant stage lasting for about 2 to 15 years. When HIV is transmitted, the fusion with CD4 cells occurs rapidly, and within a few days, the virus migrates to the regional lymph nodes and they enters the circulating system. This results in widespread dissemination to the brain and the lymphatic system, causing the primary HIV infection or the seroconversion syndrome. The most common signs and symptoms of an acute infection includes fever, fatigue, macular papular rash, headache, lymphadenopathy, pharyngitis, myalgia, arthralgia, aseptic meningitis, retroorbital pain, weight loss, depression, gastrointestinal distress, night sweats, and oral or genital ulcers. The acute illness may last from a few days to more than 10 weeks, but the duration is usually less than 13 days. Within 6 to 12 weeks, antibodies to HIV are detachable in the blood, and ELISA and Western blot testing can be document the seroconversion. At this time, the patients are confirmed as an HIV positive. The time between the viral infection and the seroconversion is referred to as window period. During this period, HIV present in the body fluids can be transmitted, but the HIV serology may be non-reactive. The disease subsequently progress to an asymptomatic chronic infection with or without persistent generalized lymphadenopathy or PGL. Though the immune function is normal during this phase, the viral replication occurs at rapid rate, resulting in the destruction of the CD4 cells, leading to the decreased immune function and disease progression. Now we'll move on to the clinical features. Patient generally remains asymptomatic until their CD4 cell counts fall below 500 cells per millimeter cube, at which the time the patient enters the symptomatic infection, previously known as AIDS-related complex and more recently referred to as stage B according to the 1993 CDC classification, which is characterized by the development of opportunistic infection. As HIV continues to replicate, the CD4 cell counts dramatically decreases. AIDS is diagnosed when the CD4 cell counts fall below 200 cells per millimeter cube or when one of the AIDS defining illness is documented. Eventually, the immune function ceases, resulting in advanced HIV infection characterized by a CD4 cell count less than 50 cells per millimeter cube, overwhelming opportunistic infection and death. Without antiretroviral therapy, the progression of HIV from transmission to death is approximately 10 to 12 years. Oral lesions that are associated with HIV infections are important as they are not only affect the quality of the life of the patient but also useful marker of disease progression and immunosuppression. According to the revised classification 1993, the group 1 lesions strongly associated with HIV infections are candidiasis, hairy leukoplakia, Kaposi sarcoma, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, and periodontal disease. The group 2 lesion less commonly associated with HIV infection that includes bacterial lesions such as Mycobacterium tuberculosis, melanotic hyperpigmentation, necrotizing ulcerative stomatitis. Group 3 lesions seen in HIV infection includes bacterial infections such as actinomycetes israeli, cat scratch disease, drug reaction, epithelioid angiomatosis, fungal infections other than candidiasis, neurological disturbances, recurrent aphthous stomatitis. Now we'll see about the oral manifestations of HIV infection. First, I will start off with oral candidiasis. It is the most common intraoral opportunistic fungal infection strongly associated with HIV infection. The four clinical patterns seen are pseudomembranous candidiasis, erythematous candidiasis, hyperplastic candidiasis, and angular cheilitis. The pseudomembranous candidiasis. This clinically appears as white to yellowish whitish plaque which can be easily scraped off if exposing the red areas. The lesions are usually extensive, involving more than one site in the oral cavity. It may also extend to involve the oropharynx and esophagus. Next, erythematous candidiasis. This is clinically seen as red lesion which are commonly located on the dorsum surface of the tongue, palate and buccal mucosa. Tongue lesions are also referred to as central papillary atrophy. Hyperplastic candidiasis. These lesions are characterized by white plaque which cannot be removed by scraping. The diagnosis can be confirmed by biopsy which demonstrates the fungal hyphae in the keratinized layer of the epithelium. These lesions can be differentiated from other oral white lesions as these respond to the topical or systemic antifungal therapy. mixed infection of Candida albicans and Staphylococcus or Candida alone. Next, we will see about the angular cheilitis, the erythema or fissure or scalings of the angles of the mouth clinically characterize this lesion. Microbiologically, the lesion can be due to the mixed infections of Candida albicans and Staphylococcus aureus or Staphylococcus or Candida alone. Candidiasis is diagnosed by the clinical appearance, past staining for candidal hyphae or biopsy tissue smear from the lesion, or culturing the organism on Seborrhoeides agar. Candidiasis can be effectively treated by topical application of antifungal agents such as nystatin or clotrimazole. The systemic antifungal used are fluconazole or itraconazole. Next, we will see about periodontal lesion. Periodontitis in HIV positive patient is influenced by age, smoking, viral load and microorganisms such as Fusobacterium nucleatum, Prevotella intermedia and Actinobacillus actinomycetes competens. HIV-associated periodontal lesion as listed by EC Clearinghouse in 1993 includes linear gingival erythema, necrotizing periodontal disease and chronic periodontitis. First, we will see about linear gingival erythema. It is a non-plaque induced gingivitis exhibiting a distinct erythematous band of marginal gingiva with either diffuse or punctuated erythema of the attached gingiva. Next, we will see about necrotizing periodontal disease. Necrotizing periodontal disease are subclassified as necrotizing ulcerative gingivitis, necrotizing ulcerative periodontitis, and necrotizing stomatitis. Necrotizing ulcerative gingivitis involves destruction of one or more interdental papilla and is limited to the marginal gingiva. Whereas necrotizing ulcerative periodontitis extend beyond the papilla and marginal gingiva, causing the loss of periodontal attachment and possibly exposing the bone. When the necrosis extends beyond the periodontium into the mucosa and the osseous tissue, it results in necrotizing stomatitis. Chronic periodontitis has also been reported with an increased rate of attachment loss or exacerbated periodontitis. The progression of the periodontal disease and the tissue destruction in the presence of HIV infection is dependent upon the presence of atypical or a typical subgingival microorganism including virus, their byproducts and the local inflammatory host response. Next, we will see about herpes simplex virus. The persistence of the active site of HSV infection for more than 1 month in a patient with HIV infection is one of the accepted definition of AIDS. These lesions can be treated by the administration of oral acyclovir. Next, we will see about herpes zoster. Herpes zoster virus infection is a recurrent viral infection seen in HIV infected patient and presents as a clinical course which is more severe in morbidity than that encountered in an immunocompetent patient. In AIDS patient, herpes zoster begins as a unilateral cluster of vesicles and the ulcers in a classical dermatome distribution but subsequently extend beyond the dermatomal boundaries and heals by scarring. Oral acyclovir is a drug of choice in the treatment of herpes zoster. Oral hairy leukoplakia. The term hairy leukoplakia was given because of the corrugated surface of the epithelium. Initially, the lesion was observed exclusively in male homosexuals. Further reports indicates their prevalence among other risk groups for AIDS and in certain immunocompromised HIV seronegative patients. Oral candidiasis and oral hairy leukoplakia are predictive indicators for a subsequent development of AIDS in HIV seropositive patients. Since many oral hairy leukoplakia cases reveals candida, the topical antifungal agents like nystatin and cotrimazole and systemic agents like ketoconazole and fluconazole are employed. Antiviral agents like acyclovir results in clinical improvement. However, The discontinuation of the therapy results in recurrence of the lesion if immunosuppression persists. See about Kaposi sarcoma. It is a multifocal neoplasm of vascular endothelial origin. The human herpes virus type 8 is involved in the pathogenesis of Kaposi sarcoma. The clinical appearance of oral Kaposi sarcoma can be macular, nodular or raised and ulcerated. The color of the lesion might ranges from red to purple. The bacillary angiomatosis mimics Kaposi sarcoma, but diagnosis can be made from the biopsy from the lesion examined with an Varti-Stary stain. The treatment features intralesional vinblastine or surgical removal. The systemic chemotherapy is indicated for widespread disseminated form. Now we'll see about aphthous ulcer. Aphthous ulcer present as recurrent, round, shallow, painful ulcers of variable size and duration that are typically found on non-keratinized oral mucosa. Oral ulcer of HIV infected patients are large and more extensive. They are usually measure more than 2 centimeters in diameter with regular borders. Aphthous ulcers respond to topical steroids. Though systemic corticosteroids have proved to be the beneficial in immunocompromised patients, they are avoided in HIV infected patients to prevent further immunodepression. The chlorhexidine and the tetracycline rinses have been reported to be useful in treating the herpetic form of aphtha. Next is oral squamous cell carcinoma. Oral squamous cell carcinoma has been reported in AIDS patients with the same frequency as in general population, associated with same risk factor but at younger age. Impaired immunosurveillance and increased chance of human papilloma virus infections are documented in few suggested cases. The treatment consists of surgical resection, chemotherapy or even a radiotherapy. Next, we'll see about molluscum contagiosum. It is an infection of the skin caused by a pox virus. It presents as shiny white and hemispherical skin-colored dome-shaped papule that often demonstrate a central depressed crater. In patients with AIDS, numerous lesions may be present which have no tendency to undergo a spontaneous resolution, and some grow to a large size. Histopathologically, the epithelium exhibit many large intracytoplasmic inclusion known as molluscum bodies. Cryotherapy is recommended for large and disfiguring lesion. Next, we will see about the thrombocytopenic purpura. It is an hematological disorder characterized by decreased number of circulating blood platelets, that is less than 1,50,000 platelets per millimeter cube of blood. The reduction may be due to the reduced production, increased destruction and sequestration subsequent to splenomegaly. Thrombocytopenic purpura in HIV disease is characterized by reduced productions of platelet due to drug malnutrition, immunological alterations, microbial invasion, or due to the course of HIV disease. Oral thrombocytopenic purpura is characterized by pinpoint petechiae following a minor trauma or even mastication. The spontaneous gingival hemorrhage is not uncommon. The platelet transfusion and corticosteroid may be beneficial provided the cause is removed. Next, we will see about the HIV-associated salivary gland disease. HIV-associated salivary gland disease is a heterogeneous group of signs and symptoms that vary from person to person and as the HIV infection progresses in the same individual. About 5% of HIV patients exhibit this condition. The symptoms includes dryness of the mouth, predisposition to the fungal disease, dental caries and infections. Now we'll move on to the non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. In 1984, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma was described in 90 homosexual men with AIDS. Since 1985, aggressive B-cell lymphoma has been classified as an AIDS-defining illness and it is the second most commonest cancer associated with HIV. This lesion tend to present as a large, painful, ulcerated masses on palate or gingival tissue. The treatment of non-Hodgkin's lymphoma is often a combination of chemotherapy and radiation therapy. Now we'll move on to the hyperpigmentation associated with HIV. In HIV infected patient, hyperpigmentation of the oral mucosa, skin and nails has been reported. The oral pigmentation may occur suddenly in HIV infected individual and has been attributed to several medications including ketoconazole and zidovudine taken by AIDS patient. Now we'll move on to the diagnosis of HIV. In that first we'll see about the virus based test. In that first I'll start off with viral culture. Viral culture directly detects the virus and hence it is highly specific. It is positive even during the window period and during the terminal phase when the viral load is high and when the ELISA may be negative. With the availability of PCR technique, HIV culture is not done routinely anymore. Next, we'll move on to the polymerase chain reaction technique, that is the PCR technique. It has revolutionized the diagnosis and the treatment of HIV infection. Two types of PCRs are available, that is the PCR for DNA provirus present in the infected host cell and the PCR for HIV RNA from plasma which detects the free virus present in plasma. Next, we'll move on to the P24 antigen detection. It is detectable during the window period and the late phase of infection when the virus is replicating fast. It is useful in blood banks where the P24 antigen along with ELISA can be shortened the window period of diagnosis to the less than 2 weeks. Now we'll see about anti-HIV antibody test. In that first we'll see about ELISA. ELISA is more popular and widely done test. ELISA tests have nearly 99% sensitivity and specificity, especially on repeated testing. If 2 or 3 ELISA tests are positive, a person is confirmed as an HIV infected individual. Being cheap and easy to do, ELISA is the mainstay of HIV diagnosis in older children and adults in developing countries. Next, we'll see about the Western blot analysis. This detects the specific antibody and show them as separate band on gel. Hence, it is more specific than ELISA. It is interpreted as positive if at least 2 of 3 bands, that is P24, GP41, GP120 or 160 bands are sensitive. If none are positive, it is labeled as negative. If only one band is positive, it is labeled as indeterminate. Next, we'll see about the immunological test and surrogate markers. CD4 plus T cell count, CD4 plus T cell percentage, and CD4 or CD8 ratio are tests done to determine immune status. A gradual decline in CD4 plus T cell count suggests disease progression. CD4 plus T cell percentage is more constant, whereas absolute CD4 is an age dependent. Next, we'll see about the salivary test. The fluid obtained from the oral cavity are saliva and gingival clavicular fluid. The immunoglobulin content of oral fluid is similar to that of blood, but their levels are lower. However, the use of an HIV IgG antibody capture assay, that is GAC ELISA, designed specifically for testing oral fluid, and it has produced encouraging results. So that completes today's class. To conclude, first we saw about what is AIDS and what is HIV. Then we have seen about its mode of transmission. Then we moved on to the pathogenesis of HIV. Then we saw about its common signs and symptoms, its clinical features. Then we saw about the oral lesion that's strongly associated with HIV. In that we saw about oral candidiasis, periodontal lesion, herpes simplex infection, oral hairy leukoplakia, Kaposi sarcoma, aphthous ulcer, oral squamous cell carcinoma, molluscum contagiosum, thrombocytopenic purpura, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, hyperpigmentation, and HIV-associated salivary gland disease. Then we moved on to the diagnosis of HIV. In that, we saw about the virus-based test. In that, we have seen about the viral culture, PCR technique, and P24 antigen detection. Then we moved on to the anti-HIV antibody test. In that we saw about the ELISA test and the Western blot analysis. Then we saw about the immunological test, surrogate markers and salivary test. I hope you have understood about HIV. HIV is an important essay and 5 mark question, especially the oral manifestation and the diagnosis is very important. So try to read about HIV. If you have any doubts regarding today's class, you can write down your doubts in Google form. Thank you. Have a great day.